What's up, fellow Mega Power March Mega friends? It is I, the OGGM. It is Tuesday. It is March 1st. It's Fat Tuesday. It's the beginning of Mardi Gras. And if you've been with me for longer than a year, you know it's a theme month. It's Mega March. So originally, Mega March was Mega Dungeon March. But then about 2 years ago, I started doing Mega Dungeon / Mega Power March, which was why I also just sort of focused the entire month, or a large chunk of the month, on superhero role-playing game related content, which basically was just talking about superhero games, reviewing superhero games, and making random superheroes using the online generators. But at the core, how it all started was a month-long love letter, to the idea of a mega dungeon. And we always do the same thing. You know, before we can talk about mega dungeons, we sort of have to define what is a mega dungeon. You know, bare bones, it's a really big dungeon. Multiple levels, multiple areas, side areas. The ability to travel through the multiple areas takes up a lot of space, a lot of stuff going on, a lot of monsters, a lot of weirdness. Mega dungeons often make no freaking sense, but they're just sort of this fun a sense of fun about them. You know, it's a blank slate for just whatever your imagination wants. You know, best definition, it's a really big dungeon. If your corner 99-cent store is a dungeon, then your local mall is a mega dungeon, you know? I guess would be the best comparison. Bigger. Break it down to bigger, but see, not always, because there are some technically mega dungeons that are actually smaller than some published dungeons. So again, is it really just the size and the multiple directions you can go, and the fact that there's no rhyme or reason often? And yeah, that plays a huge part in it, but I think there's a couple other things that define the difference between dungeon and mega dungeon. And one is a dungeon tends to usually be linear. And in most cases, it's a visit once and then you never think about it again. Let's take my favorite, White Plume Mountain. White Plume Mountain, pretty linear, you know, your 3 choices, filled with ridiculous shit. But there is a definite beginning, a definite middle, a definite twist, and a very definite end. And once you accomplish the whatchamacallits of White Plume Mountain, there's really no reason to go back, you know, unless your DM is clever enough to keep finding ways to reintroduce the fact that there's this, trap-filled volcano. But mostly, how many times are you going to go to the Caves of Terror? How many times are you going to go through the haunted halls of Steve? You know, most dungeons are designed to tell a very linear story and be one and done. So that's the first thing I think would, define the difference between dungeon, mega dungeon. Mega dungeon, not always telling a linear story, more of a here, you could go, you can do a couple things, you could leave, you could come back now, you could come back later. You could never come back, which would suck because you just wasted all that time making a mega dungeon and your players decide never to go there. But that's a separate topic. So there's the repeatability. There's the non-linearist. Because of the implied space, there's a lot of going on in a mega dungeon. So there's multiple reasons to go to a mega dungeon, leave the mega dungeon, come back to the mega dungeon, establish some type of continuing connection to the mega dungeon so that it offers a reason to be revisited more than once, as opposed again to just, the haunted caves of Fred, you're going to just go there once, you're going to accomplish the goals. Chances are you're never going to see or even probably think about other, White Plume Mountain again. So the repeatability, and that repeatability is often due to the size or often just to the fact that there's multiple stories going on in a mega dungeon as opposed to a regular dungeon, which, because regular dungeons, again, pretty linear. So I think that would be the first thing that sort of defines the difference between a mega dungeon and a regular dungeon is the more stories you can tell with a mega dungeon. It offers more opportunities. You could technically run nothing but a mega dungeon because since there's so many different ways to go in, so many different ways to go out, so many levels, so many branching paths and sub-levels and whatever have you, that there's a lot going on. And, it would be easy enough to stuff a couple other adventures inside the mega dungeon. Save you work. Oh, I'm just going to take this already printed adventure and bam, that's level 3. So yeah, the returnability, the possibilities, the blank slateness, the fact that you can use it to tell multiple stories, multiple locations, and the fact that unlike a dungeon, which sort of follows pretty consistent rules, mega dungeons don't. Mega dungeons do not have to make any sense. You could literally have a group of prehistoric goblins, and a few doors down you have some clowns on unicycles in a battle with a Tyrannosaurus Rex. Not a very unusual reference, but it's actually something I've encountered once in a mega dungeon. So because of the space, because of the fact that technically, the gloves are off. You can have multiple environments, multiple realities, multiple stories, multiple individuals, multiple situations going on. Again, sort of because of the size. Let's go visit the hidden tiger. So that gives us to number 4. And number 4 is probably the other main thing. Then with the repeatability. Ventura hidden tiger. Shout out to Hello Kitty. The repeatability, revisitability, multiple stories, multiple branching paths. And then the other thing I think the difference between a dungeon and a mega dungeon is factions, and the fact that it's always, again, refilling itself, regenerating itself, generating new stories. You go in a dungeon, you kill everybody, right? Okay. Now we just have some space that could, maybe we could sell, rent out, maybe eventually another group of monsters will move in, but basically that dungeon's done. A mega dungeon, you go in, you clear out a couple rooms, you leave, guaranteed something's going to move in to take those rooms over. Guaranteed there's already a thing going on. There's factions in a mega dungeon. You have, the troll faction, and you have the cultists, and you have the vegetable people, and there's all these factions who are fighting for control and power, which gives you multiple NPCs, more hidden Ventura art to interact with, multiple stories you could tell. You could play one faction against the other. You align yourself with one faction. You then, go to war with another faction. You have 2, 3, 4, 20 adventures, all just involving the various machinations of the politics of the various factions. And again, that's involves you up and down, multiple levels. Okay, so that's probably number 2 or 3. And then, of course, again, the multiple levels means there's no linear level limit. You could have a bunch of group of first, second levelers walk in, and if they choose to go the wrong direction, they end up in a level 16 encounter because the nonsense of mega dungeons. For a lot of people, the nonsense is the selling point. They like that sense of anything goes. They like that sense of whatever I can come up with, I could probably explain in a mega dungeon, whether it's an encounter, a trap, a trick, iconic feature, the talking heads that only answer in riddles, the giant crystal pyramid in the middle of an otherwise normal dungeon. It doesn't have to make as much sense, linear, consistent sense as, say, a dungeon has. Most mega dungeons barely make sense. It's only Greg Gillespie's stuff like Borrow Maze that tend to stand a more consistent story with a consistent theme. But I would say most mega dungeon, Caverns of Thracia tell sort of an ancient Greece theme, and Undermountain sort of does have an overlying plot, but it's very, very, very bare bones. Oh, what is the crazy wizard doing this time? Meanwhile, why is there dinosaurs and a shopping center and a bowling alley? For defining what we consider mega dungeons, dungeons are linear and tend to only be visited once, right? Mega dungeons are non-linear, multiple reasons to go, multiple reasons to return. You can tell multiple stories. Dungeons tend to tell a semi-consistent story. This guy stole these magic items. Go get them back. As opposed to mega dungeons, it's like, I don't know. Why is there a waterfall in here? Because I thought it was cool. Why is there a temple to the volcano god? Because I thought it was cool. Do they make any sense? I can sort of connect them together because Crazy Wizard. Crazy Wizard is a great explanation. That inconsistent, that randomness, the fact that if a couple rooms are emptied out and the player characters go back, there could be new and different monsters and new and different things. So Mega Dungeon perpetuates its own stories, its own adventures, and constantly gives you reasons to go there. So I like Mega Dungeons, and I think used properly, Mega Dungeons, if you just think of them not sometimes as just a giant whole, but more of as like just a series of small adventures that are kind of connected together in the same place, it sort of helps in conceptualizing a mega dungeon and explaining it, because a lot of players don't want to do a mega dungeon. They're happy to go into 150 different baby dungeons and travel this way and that way all over the world. But the idea that everything I need is right down this hole, and I could spend my entire life clearing out this hole and it'll never be the same thing twice, for some reason they don't like that. I guess because player mentality is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. If we go to the haunted caverns, that's a first level adventure. If we go to the spooky skeleton house, that's a third level adventure. If we go to the next country and deal with this treasure map, well, that's a fifth level adventure. Oh, now let's do the eighth level now. So there's that adventures tell a consistent linear level 1, level 3, level 5, level 7 story. Mega Dungeons is like, I'm gonna go down and I could have just as much chance as running into a 16 hit die dragon as I do running into a bunch of prehistoric kobolds, as I do running into some clowns, as I do running into a interdimensional traveling shop that only sells onions. And there's definitely sort of an innate silliness and a level of danger, but that same level of danger exists, depending on what campaign you're running. You could, the traveling from the haunted caverns to the haunted tower, you could roll a wandering monster encounter and still encounter, a dinosaur if that's on the table. So I don't really understand why, what the difference is between just let's go to a lot of different adventures and let's just stay in this one area and keep adventuring in the one place, and who knows what's going to happen. I've blabbed enough about my love for mega dungeons and what I think defines the difference between a mega dungeon and random Disney is random normal dungeon, but again, if I had to break it down to the two main things, it's the multiple stories and the fact that the repeatability, the multiple entrances, the multiple levels, the multiple stories, the multiple factions, the multiple reasons to leave and come back, the fact that it's constantly changing. Because it's constantly changing, it's constantly generating adventure hooks, which constantly gives the players yet another reason. Now, when I like Greg Gillespie's stuff because his mega dungeons are actually sort of just a lot of little dungeons connected together, each telling a teeny little part of a larger story. If you look at Borrow Maze, it's 32, what is it, 30, 50 teeny little dungeons that are sort of all connected. They all sort of have the same basic theme. And then underneath it is the bigger, larger dungeon, which is sort of just the idea that, you know, a lot of these baby dungeons have second levels and they sort of all become interconnected, and it sort of still tells sort of the same thing, sort of the same story. So, you know, we're going to do the best mega dungeons. We're going to do, you know, who the theory of building mega dungeons, who, what, where, when, and why. And then we're going to try and build our own mega dungeon, or at least come up with an idea for a mega dungeon. So hopefully you will stick with me all this month as we explore the mystery and wonder that is mega dungeons in the fantasy role-playing game world. Or if that doesn't interest you, then also remember that all this month it's superheroes. So we're going to be talking about superhero role-playing games. We're going to be rolling up some random superheroes. We're going to be posting those superheroes. I'm going to re-look at G-Core and Protectors Universe and give them an honest visit. And of course, I'm going to talk about how much I love Marvel and how much I love Heroes Unlimited. So just be prepared for that. And if neither of those interest you, well, then Monday, Wednesday, and Friday is still going to be news, weather, sports, controversy, and general internet nonsense. So if nothing else, you at least know Monday, Wednesday, and Friday have not changed. I am your Mega OG GM, wishing you a happy day, hoping you will stick with me all through the month of March and the weirdness that is mega dungeons and superheroes and how those sort of don't connect together once at all. Please like, please share, please subscribe. Please consider supporting me. Yes, I will sell out. I've admitted that since day one. And above all, have a great day. Enjoy this wonderful weather. See ya.